Happy Friday. You made it. Adam Chubby, Team Alpha Charlie, Douglas Realty. I did a really good, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I did a really good green screen video behind me that had an article from Bankrate talking about what are the closing costs in Maryland and what you should expect to pay, right? And I tried to do it in 90 seconds for both of them, and for both of them, one being for the buyer, one being for the seller, because they're two completely different sides of the transaction. And I feel like I rushed it, right? So maybe 6 people will watch this. That's probably an overshot, but that's okay. We're going to spend a little bit more time and try to explain how much you can expect to pay as a buyer and as a seller in the state of Maryland, right? On average, I'm no mathematician. I'm no, you know what? Let's go Caps, right? They got a big W last night. On average, I like to tell buyers you can expect to pay 3.5% to 4%, depending on the type of financing, depending on where you're buying, county-wise, right? You can expect to pay 3.5% to 4% of the sales price of your home for closing costs, right? So let's use $400,000. Let's use 4% because I'm quick on my feet with math. That's $16,000 for closing costs in the state of Maryland as a buyer. Adam, what are those closing costs? I'm glad you asked. So depending on your lender, a lot of different variables, right? You could definitely get it down lower to 3.5%. You could also be a little bit higher depending, right? And there could be credits. So that's a percentage point of what the loan company is going to want to get paid for or need to take in to close your loan. That doesn't mean all of that money has to come from you. That's one thing to keep in mind, right? Closing concessions, seller help, right? Those kind of things. But what makes up that 3.5%, 4%? 3.5%, 4% is loan applications less origination cost. We use an in-house lender that is Coastline Mortgage, right? And they don't have big overhead costs like that. You go with some bigger banks. I won't name any that rhyme with like M&T or Wells Fargo. But there's definitely a loan origination charge, usually 1% of the loan, somewhere in there, right? But let's talk $400,000. That's $4,000 of your money right up front, right? Other things you can expect to pay for: credit report, mortgage points if you're buying down a rate. So like right now, competitive rate somewhere in the high 6s. Say you want to try to get to the high 5s. It might take 2 points to get you down there. That's 2 percentage points of your loan that you're going to have to use to pay that down, right? A lot of times it doesn't make financial sense when you do the math. You're paying up front versus how long you're going to own the home versus cost saved. There's a whole calculation, right? Appraisal is usually $500 to $1,000, $500 to $1,000. Again, our in-house lender, they pay for that, but this is not a Coastline Mortgage ad either. But I'm just saying, the number one lender we refer does not charge for that. They pay for all appraisals. The article from Bankrate said that you should include inspections in there. I disagree with that because the bank literally does not care one tiny iota whether or not you get an inspection or not. They don't. VA appraiser might, FHA appraiser might, but the actual loan itself does not hinge on an inspection, right? It really could be a lot more because say you get like 4 houses and you throw the first 3 away, well, those inspection costs are gone. So title fees. So there's a title search. Make sure abstract of title is clear and that there's no clouds or encumbrance on the title that will prevent you from enjoying the property for years to come. The other thing is title insurance, making sure that they've done the search and that nobody can come back after the fact and be like, whoa, this is actually my house. No, that's what title insurance is for. And then county and state transfer and recordation taxes. That's usually your biggest ticket item. For a VA loan, you would also have a VA funding fee, but you can add that into the loan. And then depending on when you close the loan in the month, will determine how much of a prepaid or how many prepaid items like mortgage insurance, taxes. What else do we prepay for? I'm sure there's a variety of other things. My mind is kind of drawing a blank at the moment, but you get the idea, right? So transfers and recordations, and then prepaids would be the last thing. That's pretty much it for buyers. Anywhere from 3, 4, 4.5%, right? In that range, there's no 2 loan types are the same. And I felt like that Bankrate article was trying to kind of make everybody sound like they fit in this ball, and that's not the case, right? The other part of that equation is What if you are looking at a property that the seller is not paying the commission on? That could be another conversation in there, but that's for a whole nother video, a whole nother day. We spent 5 minutes talking about buyers and prepaid closings and closings. Let's talk about sellers, right? So sellers, let me run down the list. Again, same thing, title search and insurance, transfer and recordation, outstanding taxes, any outstanding taxes that were due on the property. If there was concessions, right, that amount that we talked about in the beginning of the video, that the seller is giving the buyer to help them close on this property, right, to entice them to do whatever. We're seeing a lot more of it, especially at this slower time of the year right now. And then existing mortgage payoff as well, right? So you owe $253,000. That's what it says on your statement. You're like, that's what I owe. Well, when they go to the bank actually adds in the next month's interest and all of those items onto it to give the payoff of the loan, right? And they'll say this payoff's good for 14 days. So you have to take all of those things into account. One thing this Bankrate article did not cover is commissions, right? Commissions in the state of Maryland are completely negotiable for both the seller and the buyer for that matter. But typically, not in every case, but in most cases, right, the seller pays both the buyer and seller commissions. Not required, not saying it's mandated, but the market has shown that houses where the seller provides a buyer agent commission, that house is going to sell faster than if they don't, right? Unless you're going to make up that difference. But we like to say, when we sit down with our sellers and we have a conversation, we like to factor in 6 to 6.5% is generally the number that we estimate that they are going to pay in closing costs, right? So right off the top, the big number is the 5% realtor commissions, split 50-50 between the buyer and the seller, 2.5. And then we have title costs in there. Transfer and recordation is usually pretty big, about 1% of that. I rarely come across people that have outstanding taxes, but it does happen. We have to factor that in. And then concessions are not a number that we estimate for. We never plan to give away the seller's money if we don't have to. It's kind of a silly thing. Number one thing I like to tell sellers is, I'm not in the business of spending your money if I don't have to, right? So I want to make sure you walk away with the most money and happy. You know, you're not going to be very happy if I try to give away $10,000 to get your house sold. Sometimes we have to do it, and it's part of life. But yeah, thanks for watching my TED Talk. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And don't forget, small more. 8 minutes by myself.